Hello and welcome to the Swine Disease Reporting System. This is the report number 85. My name is Guilherme Cesar here at the SDRS studio.
Hello, my name is Giovanni Travis. I'm at the SDRS.
Hello, Daniel Linhares, also with the SDRS team.
And today we will cover the findings of the month of February 2025. But before we go to these highlights, we are pleased here to introduce Dr. Tayler Bauman, that is our guest today for the SDRS podcast. Dr. Bauman is a graduate of the Iowa State University CVM in the class of 2016. And since graduation, he has served as the herd veterinary with the Maschhoffs company, where he focused primarily on the health of finishing pigs in Iowa. In today's episode, Dr. Bauman will discuss the SDRS findings of February and also monitoring strategies for PED that we are going to talk about mainly in the finishing sites. Welcome to the SDRS podcast, Dr. Bauman.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Thank you, Dr. Bauman, to come to this podcast. And to start discussion here, let's go for one pathogen that is a subject of discussion in the industry. Guilherme, what are the main updates from PRRS virus?
Yeah, Giovanni, let's start with the positivity of PRRS virus. First, in the finishing site, that's going to be one of our subjects of today's podcast, is having a substantial increase in the finishing sites for PRRS virus detection. We reached around 38%. It's still high, but compared with the historical data, we have less compared with, for example, last year. But when we go and move to the sequencing part and talk about the L1C.5, for example, that is the old variant 144 that we used to talk about it, these lineage specific had a record of detection at the beginning of the year that we have this spike of L1C.5 in January compared with the last Januaries in our database. So it's spreading more rapidly, we believe, and that's why we are having this increasing. And also the L1C.2 that we talked in our last podcast about it is also increasing. But right now, at least, is the third one most detected. The lineage L1A already passed the L1C.2 compared with the historical data.
And that's perhaps the first question for you, Dr. Bauman. Lineage 1C.2 and 1C.5. We have here reports that those are like bad guys, right? Relatively high path compared to other viruses. What's your experience with those from the clinical point of view? Are they really more virulent than others? Can you comment on how you contrast these two versus another regular PRRS?
Yeah, for sure. Really good question. So the 0.2, so the specific on the OR5 RFLP, the 124 lineage 1C.2. We experienced this year with severe impact in negative ways. Mortality really eclipsing over 60-70% on some sites. So the magnitude of severity is just so much greater than what we've seen with the historic 144 strains. We've seen the 124 similar to this several years ago on some sow farms, and we didn't really think much of it. We knew it was severe, but based on it, we did some depop, so I didn't really have to see it as much in finishing. But the lateral breaks that we're experiencing right now, just the magnitude is so great. The comment on prevalence, the 144 lineage 1C.5 continues to be the predominant strain that we're seeing. This year so far, we've detected about 53 lateral breaks in Iowa. 41 of those have been a 144 or variant of the 144. So like a 134 or 143, some different delineations with that. And then we've had 5 breaks of the 124.2, and then the remainder has been made up of lineage H or A. Looking in our historical data that we have on lateral breaks on impact, this year that seems like the severity on the 144 is much less. So although we have greater prevalence, the impact has been less. So we've seen about an 8% nursery mortality improvement this year compared to strains past. And that's on the nursery side. On the finishing side, we're seeing about a 6.5% improvement in mortality. And now counter that 124 strains. And I don't know if I have what lineage they are from years past, if they're a 0.2 or a different 0.5. But the 124 this year has about a 32% negative impact compared to previous strains. So much greater severity than we've seen historically.
And Giovanni, you do have some data to demonstrate that the lineage 1-2 of today is different from that of the past, right? So it has been changing over time.
Yeah, correct. If you look for SDRS report from last month, we did put some information there that shows this epidemiological curve of lineage 1C.2, also the geographical distribution, how that changed in the last 4 years, that is more frequent detected here in the Corn Belt states. And then we did a genetic analysis of that, well, everything that was prior to 2019 was basically unrelated to what happened from 2009 to 2021. But there was another genetic change in 2022 that really becomes the most predominant L1C.2, 1 to 4. So that probably is what is Dr. Bauman saying. These most recently, they are not related to what occurred in the past, and something changed that make those more aggressive in terms of genetically and clinical presentation in the field. So if our audience wants to look more at that in details, we have a bonus page on the report from February that brings that information, and this totally in line with what Dr. Bauman is saying there.
No. One last comment here on this PRRS. Dr. Bauman talking about the prevalence of the 144 lineage 1C.5 being more abundantly detected, right? And that also agrees, Guilherme, with what we see and report in the genotype page here for PRRS, where the lineage 1C.5, 144 is by far the most predominant overall. There are some regional differences, but overall it's very much out there, abundant out there.
Yeah, and the difference is gigantic, because if you sum up the others, is basically gonna be the same number of the L1C.5 that we have like this year. So it's really big, the amount that we had in January, what uncommon in the past.
So Dr. Bauman, did you apply something different for these outbreaks that has a clinical high impact in the finishing sites than the other strains in the past, or you continue your normal procedures there?
So from a proactive preventative standpoint, we're primarily full dosing PRRS vaccine to all our pigs coming into Iowa. Some different strategies on how that full dose is administered. If it's a single dose at weaning, if it's a split dose, in which half dose at processing, half dose at weaning, or split dose in that they get half dose at weaning and then a half dose booster at 3 weeks post wean. So that'd be pretty standard across the board. On the response side, once we detect clinical signs, I would say that our PRRS response generally is pretty similar regardless of PRRS strain. There are, we'll kind of get a gut feel as to how aggressive we need to get with the response. And then once we get sequencing back, we can really have a better gauge. But initial response is going to be starting, making sure that activity is up, fevers are down. The best we can. And that's been the problem with this 124.2 is that the fevers and lethargy are so significant. It's been really difficult to get pigs up where they stay up, and water consumption is tanks dramatically, and it stays down. And so you're facing up to 7 to 14 days of pigs that are just really down and out. And so you could try to run anything you want through the medicator. But it's just it's going to be tough to get a response out of that. We'll be looking at whole herd injections. Again, really, if we have high lethargy, low activity, high fevers, we're going to try to take the drug to the pig best we can with some whole herd shots. But other than that, it's caretakers, growers constantly getting in, try to get pigs up, get them eating, drinking, and supportive therapy through that means.
A lot of reliance on back to the basics in the barn, pig care, right? Think about temperature, ventilation, and like I said, identify pigs and treat them early.
Yep, 100%.
Thank you for sharing that, Dr. Bauman. Guilherme, what have you been doing with entire coronavirus? What are the updates there? Seems like you have been cooking some new information for the industry.
Yeah, for our audience right now, if you check the SDRS report, we have a new age category that is the facilities category that we created. And this specific one right now, we gather all the cases, all the PCR cases that were submitted from vehicles, truck washes, and also packing plants. So when you look to this information and you see the positivity right now, it would represent is like any positivity that is coming out from the farms itself. So just to clarify that to the audience, for example, 99% of these cases are environmental samples, but environmental samples that come from sow farms or from wean to finish sites. So for example, if you're testing your barn, is still going to be categorized as wean to finish age category. But everything that comes from outside of the farm, so vehicles, truck wash, and packing plants, as I give an example, is going to be categorized as the facility data. So in this data right now, we just saw that the number of cases testing for these facility cases are increasing since 2020. So which kind of means that the industry is doing more biosecurity and testing more like outside of the farm vehicles, for example. And also what caught our attention is that the positivity of this facility data in the last year, in 2024, was above since March of the wean to finish and also the sow farm category. So this caught our attention in the report, and right now I have this information displayed every month ongoing in the SDRS report.
Great developments there, Guilherme, and that's a nice information to have for the audience now that can use that for the decision-making process. Dr. Bauman, PED has been one of the pathogens that we discuss a lot and lots of conversation about that. So should be a potential target for elimination from the U.S. swine industry?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think right now we have some good headwinds with exploratory committees and AASV as well as US SHIP looking at it, forming committees to see how that path forward would go. And I think we see it on the finishing side, simple things such as like cleaning market, I say simple ideas such as cleaning market trucks has really reduced the overall prevalence in the grow finish side. And now as we get more industry peers, companies on board for that, you can really feel that. So I know there's been a couple different presentations out there here recently that have looked at, taking break rates of, 60 to 80% at time of market down to, 3 to 5%. And we saw that as well. So we started clean market trucks in grow finish out in Iowa back in 2020. And we saw that huge reduction. So I know that it's definitely a controllable disease. And I know at the Maschhoffs, we definitely support that push forward to getting that disease eliminated.
Well, I hope we reach the stage like we have for TG, no detection at all. So that would be a place that we could go. Thank you for sharing that, Dr. Bauman. Guilherme, what do we have for Mycoplasma hyopneumoniae?
Yeah, for Mycoplasma hyopneumoniae, we have an increase in the all age category, but really slightly. It's similar to what we have in January, so around 16% of positivity for this pathogen, so kind of low compared with the other pathogens. But when we look at the state level monitoring, that we see the baseline for each state and what compared to the historical detection that they had, Indiana is having more positivity compared with the historical data.
Bauman, this is another good question for you guys. Mycoplasma elimination, we talk a lot about the protocols at the sow farm, but how about at the finishing level, right? From my perspective, we do it in the sow farm to capture benefits in the finishing level. From your perspective, eliminating Mycoplasma from the system, have you guys seen the benefits, and what are those benefits in the finishing or grow finishing in general?
Yeah, and I don't have the exact numbers in front of me, but it's been very significant. And it's not, the benefit's not one that you just see on paper. You feel it in the barn. So yeah, when I started the Maschhoffs, we we're 100% positive. We hadn't taken anything through Mycoplasma closure, and so your late finishing, flu challenges, unstable myco, obviously a lot of higher vet med. You start looking at growth costs and longer to finish pigs, and so the costs that are associated with that on top of mortality. And like I said, I can't remember what our numbers were. I know we ended up cutting vet med by close to $2 per head, and so it was really significant once we went Mycoplasma negative. And so today, the Maschhoff system is almost exclusively Mycoplasma negative, and with multipliers being naive. And really, so the health benefits of that is, really significant. And there's just our feeder to market phase, low mortality, low vet med, really just, it's really significant in the value of that Mycoplasma negative status.
And you mentioned average daily gain and feed efficiency too, right?
Yeah. Yep.
How about the success rate, or the other way of asking is lateral breaks? How common are lateral breaks, especially thinking about Iowa, where there's more than a couple barns in
Yeah.
in a miles radius? So what's your perspective there on survival?
Yeah, out here in Iowa, we definitely share a lot of bugs amongst each other with our peers in the industry. One that we don't see though is Mycoplasma. I don't know if I've ever detected a lateral break in 9 years at the Maschhoffs here, and I think a lot of that just has to deal with how that the properties of that pathogen, where it's slow to develop, and the timing of how quickly we move pigs from wean to market. And so, we may have exposure, but by the time clinical signs would start presenting, the sites are generally being marketed. So in that regard, it's we don't see that pressure like we do with PRRS or PEDV, where those are pretty rapid infectivity to clinical sign rate.
And we're talking about PD before, so you think that lateral breaks, from what I hear, for Mycoplasma, it's way less common than for PED?
Oh, significantly.
Yeah.
Yep.
Uh-oh.
Yep.
And another frequently asked question is, how about monitoring for those Mycoplasma to ensure that they're still capturing the benefits, they're still negative? What's your take on the need, and if so, how do you do it?
There's probably not necessarily a need today, at least from our standpoint, unless you have clinical signs, which with, I'm at the point now, really blessed that honestly I forget about Mycoplasma as a differential in a lot of my respiratory cases, just because I haven't seen it on other tests. Like, it's come back negative. And so honestly, I don't test for it much anymore. But the testing, to give you an example or an idea of what we do on the sow farm side. So our multipliers, because they're naive now, we can use serology. So a cheap, easy surveillance. And then we do tracheal swabs on mortalities, and we'll do that at all sow farms. And then our gilts, we're doing deep trachs, antemortem, and then same thing. If there's any mortalities, we're going to do trach swabs prior to shipment. And so that it's much more intensive. Obviously, that those would be the most susceptible or most at risk if they do become positive, due to longevity in sow farms, and then shedding through wean pigs into finishing. On the finishing side, though, if we got to the point where we were a system that is naive and not using Mycoplasma vaccine, which we are today, yeah, we could probably get into where we're doing surveillance with serology. Probably not going to move into take tracheal swabs. We could do it on deads, but again, what do you do with the information if there's no clinical signs? It probably doesn't warrant the cost and effort.
Mm-hmm. And so just going back, one clarification question. You said reduction in $2 or so per pig in vet costs. Does that include vaccine? Do you still vaccinate, or is that solely antimicrobials that are?
Yeah, my understanding was that was mostly antimicrobials through water and injectable. But at that same time, we were it was for other. It wasn't just for Mycoplasma. It was for just trying to get a grasp on vet med control and making sure we're right bug for the right drug, and so some training. Mycoplasma is obviously a big piece of that because of those late finishing med pulses are so expensive compared to like a nursery phase, just based on consumption per head. So it was a piece of getting that $2 reduction at that time.
They still vaccinate?
Yes.
Myco at this point.
Yep.
So, Dr. Bauman, would you say that once you were able to remove Mycoplasma from the system, that the other respiratory pathogens also, there was a less frequency of incidence of those ones?
I don't know if we saw. You're saying like in regards to other mycoplasmas like Hyorhinus synoviae. Did I understand the question right?
Or Glassia parasuis, Haemophilus, PRRS, influenza. Most thinking on the way, like, well, if you have Mycoplasma, that also opens the door for potentially other pathogens to appear, like co-infections or co-disease occurring at the same time. Now you remove Mycoplasma, if there is a effect on the other bugs that we have out there?
Oh yeah. So for sure. So it does become a little bit of a whack-a-mole. So once Mycoplasma was our greatest concern at the time, and then it became GPS, what is now GPS, the Glassorella parasuis, and strep, and somewhat of opportunistic bugs here. As we continue to refine our strategies on pathogen control and elimination, we've been seeing a lot less GPS than we have historically, and really strep is high on our radar. And again, we've put in some vaccine strategies, some different control strategies that now we're starting to feel like maybe we're getting ahead of that game as well. And so the pig that I get in the commercial setting continues to be a cleaner, more robust pig than I've had in the past.
Thank you for sharing that. Guilherme, what we have the updates for other pathogens in SDRS?
Yeah, let's focus on influenza because we have a substantial increase in all the age categories, but we focus more in the finishing sites that we achieve like 33% of positive submissions for influenza, which is not common at this specific month of the year. We see more influenza when the spring starts and also in the fall semester. So we are having some early influenza activity, let's say, in the field with this positivity increasing in February.
So thank you for sharing that, Guilherme. And we talked a lot about the elimination of PEDV, Mycoplasma, and how free environment you have been dealing, Dr. Bauman, there. In terms of influenza, can you share with us what is your strategy for surveillance and monitoring for this specific pathogen?
On the breed to wean side, the sow farm side, we don't have any structured surveillance today, and I think there's that common feeling that it's endemic in most sites, and we certainly have had that as well. It's just which ones are clinical, and so when we have clinical signs, we'll obviously test for that, but we would not have a routine testing, surveillance testing today. I think some of that goes back to just what do you do with the information? Certainly knowing is a piece of it, so you can maybe if you need to do some proactive med pulses or different stocking strategies or modified McRebel, some control strategies, things like that. It's good information for that, but really I just think that your tools available to control it aren't as readily available or robust as PRRS or PED. So obviously PRRS and PED I think are also much greater impact than flu. There's certainly farms that will experience a more severe flu or unstable flu and see that downstream, but for the most part, when you compare it to PRRS and PED, it's generally less impactful than PRRS or PED. On the finishing side, we're only going to be testing on clinical signs. So again, really not any substantial structured surveillance. I think maybe the only one that we would look at is like gilt movements. And so if we think, they could potentially be unstable prior to entry into the farm, that, you could hold them or, implement some flu vaccine. And so really and flu vaccines are primary control today. And we've been, on the sow farms, we're looking at, single and double doses of autogenous flu vaccines. Those flu vaccines are generally regionally made. So they're, with the different companies out there now that can make autogenous vaccines and have tracking to identify different strains that are within a geographical area, they can group those together where you get, a 5-valent or 6-valent strain. And then if you have an endemic sow farm strain, continue to add that. And I think we're seeing some success with that. We have some charting and some analysis to do on that, but certainly we can see some stabilization when those products are administered. I think our biggest challenge is the development of those vaccines can take up to 8 to 10 weeks, and getting the timing right continues to be a moving target. It's really challenging. Last year it was November, so we made sure we tried to get in October, and then lo and behold, it seemed like we had instability in September. It's just like we can't ever get that timing right. But we definitely see it start quieting down once we get those doses on board.
And that's it, guys, from today's podcast. I'd like to say thanks to Dr. Bauman for the participation. We talk about influenza monitoring, mycoplasma monitoring, finishing sites, and also in cell farms, and PED elimination, and a little bit more about PRRSV L1C.5 and L1C.2. I hope you have liked the episode and see you guys on the next SDRS podcast. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.